It took me 3 years to understand that I wasn't helping my family. I was being used. And when I finally stopped, they weren't sad. They were furious. Because now they would have to support themselves. You think you know someone until the money comes along. And I was about to discover that for some people, you're only worth as long as the card works. It all started simply. My younger brother Tyler called me on a Tuesday night. His voice sounded strange, kind of hoarse. He said his car had, broken down on the way to work. Towing mechanic parts, $1,200 that he didn't have. I worked as an operations manager at a logistics company in Denver, Colorado. I earned well. I wasn't rich, but I was stable. I lived alone in a small but comfortable apartment. I had savings. And Tyler was my brother. Of course I was going to help. I transferred the money that same night. He thanked me about 5 times. He said he'd pay me back as soon as he got his salary. I told him not to worry about it, that he was family. And it was true. At that moment, I really didn't care about the money. I cared about him. I cared about being the reliable older brother. 2 weeks later, my mother called. The tone was the same. That strange mixture of urgency and shame. She said the electricity bill was higher than usual because the heater was broken, and she didn't know. $380. She worked part-time at a laundromat in Aurora, and my father had retired early because, of knee problems. Money was always tight at home. I knew that since I was a child. I grew up watching my mother counting coins to buy milk. I paid her bill, too. I didn't even think much about it. It was just about helping, right? It's what families did for each other. But then my sister, Jessie, texted me midweek. They had a problem with the rent. Her boyfriend had lost his job as a waiter. They needed $500 to avoid falling behind and risking eviction. I sent $600 to make sure they didn't suffer. In 3 months, I had helped with almost $4,000, and nobody had returned a single cent. But here's the detail I don't want you to miss. I hadn't asked for it back. I hadn't even charged for it. I never mentioned it, because in my mind, that was love. It was being a good brother, a good son, a present person. It was doing the right thing, except that no one has thanked me again the way they did the first time. The calls started to change. Before, they were full of explanations, embarrassment, that good kind of shame that shows the person knows they're asking for something big. Now, they were direct. Dry. I need $300 by tomorrow. Can you send it by Friday? Urgent. Transfer me when you can. Tyler completely stopped saying he was going to pay it back. My mom stopped explaining in detail what the money was for. Jessie started asking for increasingly larger amounts, as if she were testing my limits, seeing how far I would really go. And I kept sending them. Every time. Because every time I thought about saying no, that voice kept hammering in my head. They need you. You can afford it. They're your family. Don't be selfish. Don't be stingy. That voice was louder than any logic. I started cutting things out of my own life to keep things flowing. I canceled my gym membership. I stopped going out to dinner with my co-workers. I postponed replacing the sofa that was literally sinking in the middle. I started buying generic brands at the supermarket. I stopped filling up at the good gas station and started going to the cheapest one, all to keep that money flowing from my account straight to theirs. My girlfriend at the time, Clara, started to notice. She asked me why I was always complaining about not having enough money if I earned well and didn't have expensive vices. I lied. I said I was saving to invest in a business. She frowned but didn't insist at that moment. Until the day Tyler called me asking for $1,500 to pay a lawyer. He'd gotten a traffic ticket, hadn't paid it, ignored the letters, and now it was a lawsuit. I told him I needed to think about it calmly, because it was a lot of money at once. He hung up angrily, without saying goodbye. 15 minutes later, My mother called, crying. That low, tired cry. Saying that Tyler was desperate, that I was the only one who could help him, that family exists precisely for that, to be there in difficult times. I sent the money that same night. And that's exactly when Clara broke up with me. She looked at me and said with frightening calmness, "You're being used, and you don't even realize it." I denied it. I fought with her. I defended my family tooth and nail. 2 weeks later, I realized she was completely right. Look, before we continue, I need to tell you something. If you're feeling that tightness in your chest right now, that, wow, I've been through something similar, you're not alone. I know exactly how it feels, and I want you to stay with me until the end of this story, because what happened next changed absolutely everything in my life. Subscribe to the channel now, seriously, and leave a comment telling me, where are you watching this from right now? I want to know you're there on the other side. It was a Saturday morning. I was at the supermarket, standing in the pasta aisle, looking at the brand name and generic pasta, trying to decide if I could afford to spend $3 more. As I held the two packages, my phone vibrated. An Instagram notification. Tyler had posted a photo at an expensive steakhouse in downtown Denver. The caption read, "Finally a well-deserved day." He was with 3 friends at the table. Craft beers, grilled picana, big smiles. It had been exactly 10 days since he had asked me for $800 to cover urgent bills that were overdue and were going to have their electricity cut off. I stood there in the middle of the hallway, holding the generic pasta in my hand, staring at that photo. And for the first time in months, I felt anger. Not sadness, not disappointment, not that suffocating guilt. Pure rage. Because there I was, saving $3 on a package of pasta, cutting everything out of my life, while he celebrated his well-deserved day with $12 a bottle of beer. I didn't comment on the photo. I didn't text. I didn't call to demand an explanation. I just put my phone back in my pocket, grabbed the generic pasta, finished shopping on autopilot, and went home. But something fundamental had changed inside me in that aisle. 2 days later, on a Monday afternoon, Jessie asked for $700. A problem with her credit card, she said. I asked what the specific problem was. She was evasive. She said it was several things piling up, you know how it is. I insisted politely. I asked her to send me the statement just so I could understand the situation. She got irritated immediately. Seriously? Are you going to interrogate me? Are you going to help or not? I took a deep breath and said I needed to see the invoices before sending anything. She hung up on me. Literally. 10 minutes later, like clockwork, my mother called me. Her voice was tired, almost disappointed. She said I was being difficult with Jessie, that she only needed simple help and that I was making a fuss over nothing, complicating everything. I tried to explain that I just wanted to understand the situation. My mother gave that long, heavy sigh and said something that echoed, "You've changed, son." I changed? Me? I, who had sent almost $10,000 in 6 months. I had cut my life in half to support theirs. I had lost my girlfriend precisely because of that. And I, who had changed. I hung up the phone slowly. I sat on that sunken sofa that I couldn't bring myself to replace. And for the first time, I picked up a notebook and started adding it all up. Every transfer, every PIX payment, every deposit. I had saved it. All in my bank history. $10,340 in 6 months. Not a single cent returned. No genuine thanks after the first few times. No real change in the financial situation of any of them. Only more requests. Always more requests. Always more urgent. Always more necessary. And for the first time, looking at those numbers on paper, I asked myself the question I had avoided for half a year. Where exactly does this end? What is the end? At what point do they stop needing O? And I stop giving. The answer came the following Thursday. Tyler called me again. No beating around the bush. No warm-up. Straight to the point. I need $2,000 by Friday. A down payment on a new apartment. He said it was a unique, expensive opportunity, and that if he didn't put down the money by the end of the week, he'd lose the place. I asked him with genuine calm where he was currently living. He said, with a friend, but I can't stay here anymore. I asked why he hadn't. Saved money before starting to look for an apartment. He huffed irritably. Man, you can't plan everything perfectly in life. Things happen. I took a deep breath. I looked out the window, and I said, no, Tyler, I'm not going to send it. Silence on the other end. A long, dense, heavy silence. Then he spoke, in that voice of someone who genuinely can't believe what they're hearing. Are you serious? Completely serious. I don't have one. You always have it. You've always had it. And that phrase, that damned phrase. You always have it. As if I were an infinite resource, an ATM that never runs out. As if my work, my stability, my choices, my sweat, were just a resource eternally available for him to withdraw whenever he wanted. He hung up without saying goodbye. 30 minutes later, Jessie texted me, short, direct. Tyler told me, it's cold, huh? I read it and didn't reply. An hour later, my mother called again, and this time, her voice wasn't tired. It was hard, firm. Disappointed in a way that cut through you. She said Tyler was really going through a tough time, that I was perfectly capable of helping but was selfishly choosing not to, and that this kind of attitude wasn't that of a real family. I tried to explain. I talked about the $10,000. I said that nobody had ever returned a single penny. She cut me off mid-sentence. You earn well, they don't. It's that simple. As if earning well automatically meant creating an eternal debt to those who earn less. I hung up the phone. And for the first time in months, I didn't feel guilty. I felt exhausted, but not guilty. Because something had finally clicked. They weren't asking for help. Help is punctual. Help is temporary. Help is driven by genuine gratitude. They were demanding an obligation, a permanent obligation. An obligation that only existed for me, never for them. I spent the entire weekend alone. I completely turned off notifications on my phone. I put it on airplane mode. I watched 3 movies I'd been putting off for months. I ordered good, expensive Thai food, the kind I hadn't ordered in ages. I slept until 10 in the morning on Sunday, and for the first time in a very, very long time, I didn't feel wrong for doing it. On Monday morning, my mother texted me. Short, direct, venomous. Tyler lost the apartment. I hope you're happy with your decision. I read it. I archived the conversation without replying. Jessie posted a cryptic message on social media on Tuesday. Funny how some people completely forget where they came from when life gets a little better. I saw it. I didn't like it. I didn't comment. I just left it there. And Tyler? Tyler simply stopped talking to me. He disappeared, as if I were dead, as if I never existed. I expected to feel that overwhelming guilt returning. I expected to wake up in the middle of the night with that voice telling me I was selfish, that I was cruel, that I had abandoned my family. But the voice didn't come. Because now, finally, I was seeing everything with crystal clarity. They had never needed me, my presence, my company, my affection. They had needed my money, and the very second the money stopped flowing, their affection dried up along with it. I started noticing patterns that had always been there but that I had completely ignored. Every time I sent money without question, they became affectionate, grateful, present, and attentive. Every time I hesitated, questioned, or dared to say no, they became cold, distant, irritable, and passive-aggressive. I wasn't a son, I wasn't a brother, I was a sponsor, and when the sponsorship ended, the contract ended too. 3 weeks after our last contact, my father called me. He almost never called. He always left my mother to handle family matters. But this time, he called. His voice was soft, tired, aged. He said the whole family was very upset with me, that my mother was genuinely hurt, that Tyler was really angry, that Jessie thought I was a traitor. I calmly asked my father if he knew exactly how much money I had sent over the last 6 months. He said he knew more or less. I told him the exact number, $10,340. He was silent for about 5 long seconds. So I asked him if he thought it was fair that I had to completely cut off my own life, my stability, my future, to indefinitely finance their instability. He was silent again, a different kind of silence, heavier. Then he said, almost in a whisper, "Family helps family, son." I helped Dad for 6 months straight, without questioning, without charging, without asking for anything in return, and nobody truly thanked me. Nobody returned a single cent. And now that I've finally said no just once, I've become the villain of the whole story. He sighed deeply, in that tired way. "It's complicated, son." And he hung up. "It's complicated." That was his defense, the only defense he was able to mount. A whole month passed. Total silence. No calls, no messages, no contact. I continued working, paying my bills on time, slowly rebuilding my financial stability that had been completely destroyed. And little by little, almost without realizing it, I began to notice how much mental space they occupied. Before, I lived in constant anxiety, waiting for the next call, the next urgent emergency, mentally calculating how much more I could give without completely breaking down, planning in advance what cuts I would make in my life to fit in more help. Now, silence. And that silence was surprisingly light, breathable. Then, on a normal Wednesday afternoon, my mother showed up at my work. She had never, in my entire adult life, done that. She had never shown up at my work. She was waiting, sitting in the reception area, when I went down for my lunch break. Her face was visibly tired. She looked like she had aged 10 years in 6 weeks. She didn't apologize. She didn't ask how I was. She didn't say she missed me. She was direct. Bluntly direct. "Jessie is being evicted. She needs $1,200 by Friday." I looked at her. I really looked. And I saw something I'd never been able to see so clearly before. She wasn't worried about me, about my health, about my life, about my well-being. She was exclusively concerned with the problem, and I was simply the most convenient solution. I always had been. "No, Mom. She's literally going to be left on the street. She has a boyfriend. He has no money at all. And me? Am I obligated to support both of them?" She blinked, genuinely confused by the question. "But you have the means." "Having the means doesn't automatically mean it's my obligation to solve her entire life." My mother looked at me as if I had just said the most absurd, most incomprehensible thing in the world, as if I had spoken in an alien language. "But you're her brother. Your family. And she is a 27-year-old adult." Silence. An awkward, uncomfortable silence that seemed to fill the entire reception area. My mother shook her head slowly, with that deep disappointment etched on her face. "You've really changed completely." And she simply left, turned her back and walked away without looking back. I went back to my floor. I sat at my desk. I opened my computer. And I noticed something physical. My hands weren't shaking. My chest wasn't tight and choking. My throat wasn't closed. I had said no. I had maintained my boundary. And I was completely fine. Jessie was evicted the following week. I found out through Facebook. She posted an extremely dramatic photo with 3 large suitcases on the sidewalk, captioned in all caps, "It's in the difficult times that you discover who really cares." Dozens of supportive comments, dozens of "You deserve better, friend," dozens of "God will reward your heart." I didn't comment. I didn't like. I just observed from afar. Tyler commented on her photo. "Real family doesn't abandon you in the worst moments." Lots of hearts. I archived his profile too. 2 days later, through a distant cousin who still followed me, I found out that Jessie had moved straight into my mother's house, and that Tyler had actually been living there for almost a month. The 2 of them, adults, moving back in with my retired mother, who could barely pay her own bills. And the most interesting detail, nobody had asked me for financial help for this. Nobody had called me saying, "I need money to help them live here." Because everyone knew exactly what my answer would be. I continued living my life. I finally bought the new sofa I wanted. I went back to the gym after 8 months off. I started going out with my coworkers again for Friday happy hours. And slowly, step by step, I completely rediscovered what it was like to live without a crushing weight on my shoulders. Then, 3 months after the last contact with any of them, my father had a heart attack. My mother called me directly from the hospital. Her voice was completely broken, desperate, almost unrecognizable. She said it was serious, that he was in the ICU, that I needed to go immediately. I dropped everything at work and went. When I arrived in the ICU hallway, Tyler and Jessie were sitting in plastic chairs. They saw me coming. They looked directly at me and looked away. They didn't speak to me. They didn't wave. Nothing. I didn't push either. I just stood there, waiting for news. My father was stable but was going to need heart surgery. Complex. Expensive. The doctor came to talk to us in the hallway. She explained the procedure, the risks, the recovery, and then came the number. $32,000. After the insurance. The insurance covered part, but that was the part that was left for the family. My mother literally panicked. She started crying right there. Tyler was completely silent, staring at the floor. Jessie was nervously biting her nails, and everyone, absolutely everyone, looked at me. At the same time, as if they had rehearsed it, as if I were the automatic and obvious solution. "I don't have $32,000 saved up," I said calmly. My mother closed her eyes tightly. She took a deep breath. "You can get a loan from the bank. With your credit, you can easily get it." "No, I'm not going to do that. He is your father. And I'm going to help in every other way possible. I'm going to research healthcare programs. I'm going to call the hospital to negotiate payment plans. I'm going to look at all the options, but I'm not going to go into debt for 3 years. Tyler exploded. He stood up from his chair, red-faced. "Of course, right? Always thinking only of yourself, as always." I looked straight at him, without anger, without change. "Where are the $10,000 I gave you over the last few months?" A sepulchral silence in the hallway. "Exactly where I imagined," I said, and I walked away. I spent the next 2 weeks working in silence. I called 5 different healthcare organizations. I filled out 17 forms. I negotiated with 3 hospital departments. I argued with receptionists. I waited for hours on hold. And finally, I got approved for a state assistance program that covered 80% of what I was missing. Tyler and Jessie didn't lift a finger to help. They just complained that it was taking too long. My father's surgery was a success. When he left the ICU, I was there. I brought flowers. I sat by his bedside for 3 hours. We talked about absolutely simple things. American football, the weather, a movie he'd seen before the heart attack. Nothing profound. But he was alive, breathing, and I was there. My mother thanked me quickly for my efforts in securing the program. but her tone was cold, formal, as if I had only done the bare minimum, as if I still owed her much more. Tyler and Jessie literally didn't speak a word to me during my entire hospitalization. 2 weeks later, my father was discharged from the hospital. I told them I couldn't pick him up because I had an important meeting at work. That was true. But even if it wasn't, I wouldn't have gone. Because I had realized something fundamental. I could be present without destroying myself in the process. I could help without completely emptying myself. But they didn't want that version. They wanted the ATM back. A month after my dad was discharged from the hospital, Tyler texted me. The first text in 4 whole months. Simple, direct. We need to talk in person. I didn't reply right away. I waited 3 whole days. I left him hanging. Then I replied. About what specifically? Guys, book a spot. We arranged to meet at a cafe near my house on a Saturday afternoon. He arrived 20 minutes late. He didn't apologize for being late. He sat in the front row, crossed his arms defensively, and went straight to the point, without beating around the bush. The whole family is falling apart, and it's your fault. I didn't react. I just looked at him. I let him say everything he needed to say. He said I had abandoned everyone at the worst possible time, that my mother was living under extreme stress, that Jessie was becoming depressed while living there, that my father was still weak, recovering, and that all of this was a direct result of my absurd selfishness. When he finally finished his speech, I calmly asked, "How much did you return?" He frowned. "What?" "Of the $10,000 I sent you over 6 months, exactly how much were you able to return?" He snorted irritably. "Oh, this again? Seriously?" "Yes, this again. Because you're here demanding accountability from me, accusing me of abandonment, but you've never, not even once, taken responsibility for your own." He blushed. I was in real need. And I was sacrificing myself completely, cutting my own life short. And you never, not for a second, noticed or cared. He slammed his hand on the table. A few people in the cafe looked. "You're not my brother anymore. To me, you're dead." He stood up and stomped out. I sat down. I finished my coffee slowly. I paid the bill with a tip. And I walked home. And for the first time in my entire life, I felt absolutely nothing. Not anger, not sadness, not guilt, nothing. 6 months passed without any contact. My life was unrecognizable. I had real savings again. I'd started investing monthly again. I had begun weekly therapy to process everything. And I had finally understood something huge. I wasn't, never had been, and never would be responsible for their emotional or financial stability. I could love my family deeply without being destroyed by them. Sarah came into my life around that time. A nurse, independent, no drama, no debt, no troubled family asking for money. She asked me about my family the 3rd time we went out. I told her the whole truth. No sugarcoating. No hiding anything. She listened in silence. And in the end, she said something simple. "You did exactly what you should have done." I desperately needed to hear that from someone. A year and 2 months after our last contact, my father called me. His voice was weaker, more tired, older. He said he missed me, that he wanted to see me, to talk, without pressure. I agreed. We met in a public park near the center, just the 2 of us. He was visibly thinner, more stooped. His hair was whiter. We walked in absolute silence for about 10 minutes. Then he stopped at a bench, sat down and said, "I understand why you stopped providing financial support." I looked at him, genuinely surprised. "Your mother doesn't understand. She thinks you abandoned the family. Tyler and Jessie don't understand. They think you turned your back on them. But I understand perfectly. They were using you, sucking you dry, and you finally realized it." Why didn't you ever say anything back then? Why didn't you ever defend me? He gave a sad, tired, defeated smile. Because it's infinitely easier to let you be the villain of the story than to admit out loud that I raised 2 grown children who can't support themselves. We sat on that bench for 20 minutes. None of us spoke. We just sat there, side by side, watching the park. Before I left, he hugged me, tightly, and whispered in my ear, "You never owed me anything, son. Never." It was the first time in my entire life that someone in my family had said that. Jessie sent me a friend request on Facebook 6 months later. I accepted. She didn't text back. She didn't say anything. She just accepted that I could see her life from afar. She had landed a steady job, clinic receptionist, lived alone in a tiny apartment, posted photos with a stray dog, seemed stable. Tyler, too. He had landed a manager position at a hardware store. He posted pictures of himself in his work uniform. He had a new girlfriend. He finally seemed like an adult. They had succeeded. Without me. Without my money. Without my constant bailouts. And I realized the painful truth. When I stopped being the automatic solution, they were forced to become their own solutions. I never spoke directly to either of them again. Not out of resentment, not out of anger, but simply because there was no longer a real connection. The entire bond had been built on financial transactions. When the transactions stopped, the bond disappeared completely. My mother would still text me occasionally. Birthdays, Christmas, Easter, always brief, always formal, always cold. I would reply politely, but I never visited, never called, never started a conversation. I saw my father every 3 months, always just the 2 of us. We would have lunch in comfortable silence. We would talk about absolutely nothing important. He never asked for money. He never demanded more of my presence. He only accepted my company when I offered it, and that was enough. Sarah and I got married on a rainy Saturday in October. Small ceremony, intimate, 20 people. I didn't invite Tyler. I didn't invite Jessie. My mother came, but left soon after the ceremony. Said she wasn't feeling well. My father stayed until the end of the party. He danced with me in that awkward father-son dance. He cried a little during the toast. Today, 3 years later, I have a life that is genuinely mine. Not built on suffocating guilt, not sustained by imposed obligation, not dependent on their approval. I help whomever I want to help, whenever I want, if I can, in whatever way I choose. I learned something no one ever taught me. True love isn't measured in bank transfers. Love isn't about self-sacrificing. And a true family, a real family, doesn't cruelly punish you for having healthy boundaries. Last week, 3 years later, I received a letter in the mail, handwritten, handwriting I instantly recognized. It was from Jessie. She didn't ask for money. She didn't offer a formal apology either. But she wrote something that made me take a deep breath and reread it 5 times. It took me 3 whole years to finally understand that. You didn't abandon me back then. You just stopped carrying me. And I really needed to learn to walk on my own. Thank you for forcing me to grow up, even though I hated you for it at the time. I didn't reply to the letter. I didn't call. I didn't text. But I kept it in a drawer. Because sometimes justice doesn't come in the form of dramatic confrontation. It doesn't come in satisfying revenge. It doesn't even come in public acknowledgement of what you suffered. Sometimes justice is silent. It's simply giving yourself full permission to live without that destructive weight on your shoulders. It's waking up in the morning and not feeling that automatic anxiety about what the next emergency will be. It's looking at your bank statement and seeing stability instead of holes. I don't hate my family. I don't hold grudges. I don't wish them ill. I just don't sacrifice my peace of mind for them anymore.
I don't twist my life to fit their expectations. And that doesn't make me a cruel or selfish
person. Set me free. If you're watching this right now, at this very moment, and you're experiencing something even remotely similar, I need you to listen to this carefully. You're not selfish for having clear boundaries. You're not evil for saying no. You're not obligated to destroy yourself financially, emotionally, or mentally to prove your love. Because love that drains you isn't real love. It's exploitation disguised with a pretty name. I spent 3 whole years feeling guilty, feeling wrong, feeling like the villain of the story. But the truth I finally understood is this. They didn't need me. They needed unrestricted access to my bank account. And when that access was cut off, their love evaporated along with it. A true family stays. Even when you say no. Even when you set boundaries. Even when you can't solve all the problems. A true family loves you for your presence, not for your financial usefulness. What if your family only values you when you're paying their bills, solving their problems, financing their lives? Then maybe, just maybe, you need to completely reevaluate exactly what you call family. Today I have peace, I have stability, I have a healthy marriage, my savings are growing, I have plans for the future, and I have something I didn't have before. Self-respect. Because I finally learned that respecting myself isn't selfishness, it's survival. You deserve to live without this burden. You deserve to build your life without having to support everyone else's. You deserve to be loved for who you are, not for how much you can give. What if they make you feel guilty for setting boundaries? Then the problem was never you. It was always them. If this story touched you in any real way, if it stirred something inside you, leave a like now. Not for the algorithm, not for the statistics, but because maybe you also need to hear out loud that it's okay to stop carrying the weight alone. Subscribe to the channel and click on the video that's appearing on your screen right now. It's a story that will show you exactly what happens when you finally definitively choose yourself first. Don't miss it. You need to see this.